What happens when the weakest Omega in the pack unknowingly saves the one wolf who could change everything? For Alara Moss, life in the Silvercrest pack meant keeping her head down, her voice soft, and her wolf buried so deep that most days she wondered if she even had one. As the pack's lowest Omega, she served its ceremonies, cleaned the Alpha's hall, and endured the pitying looks of wolves who saw her as little more than human. But when Alpha Rowan Kane chose the winter solstice ceremony to publicly reject their mate, Bond, in front of 5 gathered packs, shattering it so brutally that she collapsed, screaming on the marble floor, everything changed. And what happens next, no one was prepared for. Not Rowan, not the packs, not even the ancient beings who had been searching for her across 100 years. The scent of pine and wood smoke filled the grand hall of Silvercrest Manor, mingling with the excited chatter of hundreds of wolves. Alara moved through the crowd with a silver tray balanced on her palms, her simple gray dress a stark contrast to the jewel-toned gowns swirling around her. The winter solstice ceremony was the pack's most important gathering of the year, when alliances were forged, mates were announced, and the hierarchy was reinforced with ancient ritual. She kept her eyes down, as always. It was safer that way. More wine. A beta female snapped her fingers without looking at Alara. The dismissive gesture sent a familiar ache through her chest, but she simply nodded and hurried toward the kitchens. This was her place. This was all she'd ever known. Alara had been born Omega in a pack that valued strength above all else. Her parents, mid-ranking betas, had made no secret of their disappointment. While other pups shifted for the first time at 12 or 13, Alara had reached 18 without so much as a whisper from the wolf that should have lived within her. The pack healers called it dormancy. Her parents called it shame. "You're lucky the Alpha lets you stay," her mother had said just that morning, adjusting Alara's collar with rough hands. "After tonight's announcements, things will change. You'll need to work harder, serve better, prove your worth." Alara hadn't asked what announcements. She never did. The hall grew suddenly quiet as Alpha Rowan Kane stepped onto the raised dais at the far end. He was magnificent, as always. Tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from stone. The scent of forest and embers rolled off him in waves, mixed with ozone and steel. Power incarnate. Every wolf in the room felt the weight of his dominance, the way it pressed against their skin like atmospheric pressure before a storm. Next to him stood Seraphina Marsh, the pack's most beautiful and ambitious beta female. Her cinnamon and iron scent carried notes of satisfaction as she placed one elegant hand on Rowan's arm. Her smile was pure victory. Alara's wolf, that tiny, sleeping thing she could barely sense, stirred for the first time in months, a whisper of warning, a flutter of pain. "Tonight," Rowan's voice carried effortlessly through the hall, "we gather not only to honor the moon goddess and celebrate the solstice, but to announce a decision that will shape our pack's future." The crowd pressed closer. Alara found herself trapped near the front, unable to retreat to the kitchens as planned. "The beta families have long awaited my choice of mate," Rowan continued. "The alliance I forge tonight will strengthen Silvercrest, bring us resources and tactical advantage we've lacked for generations." Seraphina's smile widened. Her father, Beta Marcus Marsh, stood nearby with barely concealed triumph on his weathered face. Then Rowan's eyes found Alara in the crowd. Time stopped. She felt it then, a golden thread that had always been there, invisible until this moment, connecting her heart to his. The mate bond blazed to life with such sudden intensity that she gasped, stumbling backward as warmth flooded every cell of her body. The scent of lavender and morning dew erupted around her. Her true scent finally unleashed after years of supernatural suppression. Rowan's face went white, then red, then hard as granite. "No," he said, the single word dropping like a stone into still water. The crowd murmured, confused. Elara couldn't breathe. The Bond pulled at her, demanding acknowledgement, singing with the rightness of their connection. She could feel his wolf, massive and dominant, prowling just beneath his skin. And for one perfect, crystalline moment, she felt it reach for hers. Then Rowan raised his hand, and power crackled in the air. "I, Alpha Rowan Kane of the Silvercrest Pack, reject you, Elara Moss, as my mate. I sever this bond before the Moon Goddess and these witnesses. You are nothing to me. You will never be anything to me." The bond snapped. It didn't break gently. It tore through Elara like a wildfire, burning away something essential and leaving only charred ruins behind. She screamed, the sound raw and animal, as she collapsed to the polished floor. Her chest felt like someone had reached inside and ripped out her heart while it was still beating. Through the haze of agony, she heard gasps, shocked whispers, Seraphina's delighted laugh. "Get her out of here," Rowan commanded, his voice cold and empty. "Remove her from Pack lands. She is no longer welcome in Silvercrest territory." Strong hands gripped her arms, guards in black uniforms, their faces carefully blank. They hauled her upright while she sobbed, her legs unable to support her weight. "Please," she managed to whisper, though she didn't know what she was begging for. The pain was beyond anything she'd imagined, physical and emotional and spiritual all at once. Her parents stood frozen in the crowd. Her mother's face showed horror, but when Elara reached toward her, she turned away. Her father grabbed her mother's arm and pulled her back, shaking his head. They refused to help. They refused to even look at her. "Omega," one of the guards muttered, disgust thick in his voice. "Can't believe she thought—" "Just get her outside," the other interrupted. "Alpha's orders." Architected narrative arc, with emotional stakes and pacing targets. Good start. I'm establishing the rejection scene with proper emotional weight and the key elements: public humiliation, physical pain of bond severing, guards removing her, parents refusing to help. Now I need to continue with her being cast into lethal conditions, then move into Act 2 with the Wilderness Kibanta near-death sequence. I need to keep track of my word count and make sure I'm hitting the targets. Let me continue building this out. They dragged her through the hall, past hundreds of staring wolves. Some looked sympathetic. Most looked relieved it wasn't them. Seraphina's cinnamon and iron scent followed her like smoke, tainted now with smug satisfaction. The guards threw her past the pack boundary markers and into the forest beyond. It was snowing, thick flakes falling from a black sky, and Elara wore only her thin serving dress and soft indoor shoes. "Don't come back," one guard said. "If you cross that boundary again, the Alpha has authorized us to kill you on sight." Then they were gone, and she was alone in the winter darkness. Elara tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. The mate bond, or what remained of it, throbbed like an open wound, sending waves of nausea through her system. She could still feel the ghost of what she'd lost, the shape of the connection that should have been there, now just empty space. She crawled instead, her hands going numb in the snow. She had no plan, no destination. Survival instinct drove her forward, though a dark part of her mind whispered that maybe she should just stop. Just let the cold take her. It would be easier than this. But something, that tiny dormant wolf maybe, or simple stubbornness, kept her moving. The blizzard intensified as she stumbled deeper into unmarked territory. The wind howled through the trees like living things, and the temperature plummeted. Her dress was soaked through within minutes, her skin turning blue beneath the wet fabric. She couldn't feel her fingers anymore, or her toes. The world narrowed to each difficult breath, each impossible step. Time lost meaning. She might have been walking for minutes or hours when she finally collapsed against the entrance of a half-collapsed barn, some forgotten structure from when humans had tried to farm these lands generations ago. The roof had partially caved in, but one corner remained intact, offering minimal shelter from the storm. Alara dragged herself inside and curled into the driest corner, wrapping her arms around herself. Her teeth chattered so hard she thought they might break. The mate bond ache had faded to a dull, constant throb, background noise to the more immediate threat of freezing to death. "This is it," she whispered to the darkness. Her voice sounded strange, distant. "This is how it ends." She'd been rejected by her destined mate. Cast out by her pack, abandoned by her family, left to die in a blizzard wearing nothing but a servant's dress. The unfairness of it struck her suddenly, cutting through the cold-induced delirium. She'd done nothing wrong, nothing except be born Omega, except exist as herself. And for that, they'd sentenced her to death. Anger flickered in her chest, weak but present, a tiny spark of defiance. Then even that faded as the cold seeped into her bones. Her eyes grew heavy. The temptation to sleep became overwhelming, even though some distant part of her knew that sleep meant death. "I'm sorry," she mumbled, though she didn't know who she was apologizing to. The moon goddess, maybe, for being such a disappointment. Her wolf, for never being strong enough to let it emerge. Her eyes closed. The world went dark. Warmth. That was the first thing Alara became aware of, warmth surrounding her, pressed against her from all sides. And breathing. Multiple sources of rhythmic breathing, deep and steady. She forced her eyes open, expecting to find herself in whatever afterlife the moon goddess provided for rejected wolves. Instead, she found fur. Massive wolves surrounded her, their bodies creating a protective cocoon of heat. She blinked, confused, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. 1 wolf, 2 wolves, 3, 4, 5. She kept counting, her eyes widening with each new shape. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 enormous wolves lay in a circle around her, their bodies touching, their combined warmth bringing her back from the edge of hypothermia. But these weren't normal wolves. They were massive, each one larger than any alpha she'd ever seen. Their fur seemed to shimmer in the dim pre-dawn light, filtering through the broken barn roof, colors ranging from silver white to coal black, with every shade in between. And they were all watching her with intelligent, knowing eyes. Alara's breath caught. She tried to move, to scramble backward, but her body was too weak. The nearest wolf, a massive silver male with eyes like liquid mercury, made a low, rumbling sound. Not a growl. Something almost like a purr, if wolves could purr. "You're safe," a voice said. Alara's head snapped toward the barn entrance. A man stood there, or something that looked like a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with silver-threaded dark hair and scars crossing his weathered face. He wore simple traveling clothes, but power radiated from him like heat from a forge. His scent hit her next. Aged oak and winter snow, pine and approaching storms, layered and complex and utterly overwhelming. "Who?" Her voice came out as a croak. "What?" "My name is Theron Ashwood," the man said, stepping closer. His movements were fluid, predatory. "I lead the Shadow Guard, and we've been waiting for you." "Waiting?" Alara's mind couldn't make sense of his words. I'm nobody. I'm just... You're everything, Theron interrupted gently. He crouched down to her level, and she saw that his eyes were the same mercury silver as the wolf's who'd comforted her. The prophecy spoke of you. When the false alpha rejects his true mate, shattering the binding placed upon her, the matriarch will rise. She will come when winter claims the land, bearing the scent of ancient flowers and morning light. She will be broken and made whole. She will be lost and found. She will be weak and become unbreakable. Each word struck her like a physical blow. That's just a story, a children's rhyme. Is it? Theron's scarred face softened with something like compassion. Tell me, Elara Moss, do you know why you never shifted? Why your wolf slept while others awakened? She shook her head mutely. Because someone bound her, Theron said quietly. Someone locked your power away when you were too young to remember, too small to fight back. They sensed what you were, what you would become, and they were terrified. That's impossible, Elara whispered. But even as she said it, something deep inside her stirred. That sleeping wolf, that presence she'd always felt but never accessed, suddenly felt closer. Aware. Your parents, Theron continued, and his voice carried the weight of truth, bound your power when you were 6 months old. They meant well in their way. They thought they were protecting you, hiding you from those who would kill you before you could grow into your strength. But in doing so, they crippled you, forced you to live half a life. Tears burned in Elara's eyes. Why would they? Fear, Theron said simply. The last matriarch was hunted and killed before she could claim her throne. Your parents thought if they suppressed your power, you'd be safe. Ordinary. Overlooked. It worked, Elara said bitterly. I was overlooked by everyone. Until last night. Theron's expression turned fierce. Until your mate bond snapped into place, and your so-called alpha rejected it. That rejection, that shattering of a sacred bond, it broke the binding on your wolf. All that pain you felt wasn't just the mate bond tearing. It was chains breaking, magic unraveling, your true self finally breaking free. The silver wolf beside her whined softly and nudged her hand with his massive head. She touched his fur automatically, marveling at how soft it was, how warm. These are the Shadow Guard, Theron said, gesturing to the wolves around her. We've existed for centuries, passing down our duty through bloodlines. We are bound by ancient oath to find and protect the matriarch. We've been searching for 23 years, since the night you were born, and the moon goddess herself marked the sky with green fire. Elara remembered the stories, the northern lights that had appeared that winter night, visible even in the southern territories. Her mother had always changed the subject when she asked about it. I felt it when the binding broke, Theron continued. We all did. Your power called to us like a beacon, and we came as fast as we could. But when we arrived at your pack lands, you were already gone. We tracked you through the storm, found you here at the edge of death. You saved me, Elara realized. We fulfilled our purpose, Theron corrected gently. Now, if you're willing, we'd like to help you claim what's yours. I don't understand. Elara's head was spinning. What's mine? I have nothing. You have everything, Theron said. You are the matriarch, the first in 100 years. You are the balance to the Alpha Kings, the voice of mercy and justice, the bridge between human and wolf. Your power is empathy, healing, and unbreakable authority. And when you finally shift, Elara Moss, the world will know that the age of petty alphas and territorial squabbles is over. Something inside her chest cracked open at his words. Not painfully this time. It felt like dawn breaking after an endless night. Her wolf stirred. Not the tiny, sleeping presence she'd always known. This was something vast and ancient and powerful beyond comprehension. It yawned and stretched, testing the limits of her body. "She's waking," one of the other wolves said, shifting to human form. A woman appeared, lean and scarred, with amber eyes. "Can you feel her?" Ilara could. Oh, she could. "What do I do?" she asked, panic rising as power built inside her like water behind a dam. "Let go," Theron said simply. "Stop fighting. Stop making yourself small. Let her out." "I don't know how." "Yes, you do," he said. "You've always known. You just weren't allowed to remember." The dam broke. Power exploded through Ilara's body, and for the first time in her life, she heard her wolf's voice clearly. "Finally. I've waited so long to meet you." The voice was ancient and young at once, patient and fierce, gentle and absolutely unbreakable. "I'm sorry," Ilara thought back, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know." "Hush, little one. You were never meant to carry that guilt. Now, shall we show them who we really are?" The transformation began. Unlike the violent, painful shifts she'd seen other wolves endure, this felt like coming home. Her bones didn't snap. They flowed, lengthening and reforming with liquid grace. Fur erupted across her skin, pure white with threads of silver that caught the light like starshine. She grew larger. And larger still, her body expanding until she towered over the massive Shadow Guard wolves. Energy crackled around her, visible as silvery mist that made the air shimmer. Her senses exploded outward. She could smell the individual trees in the forest, hear the heartbeats of every living thing within a mile, feel the moon's pull even though it was hidden behind morning clouds. Her eyes opened, and she knew without seeing that they glowed with an otherworldly white light. The transformation completed, and Ilara threw her head back and howled. The sound shook the barn, sent snow cascading from surrounding trees, and carried across the territories like a declaration of war. It was a sound of grief and rage and triumph, all woven together, the voice of something that had been caged and was finally, gloriously free. The Shadow Guard wolves dropped to their bellies, heads bowed in reverence. Theron, still in human form, knelt. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "She is the matriarch," he said, "and I will follow her until my last breath." "We all will," the amber-eyed woman said, shifting back to wolf form and bowing her head. "Always." Ilara looked down at them, at these powerful beings who'd crossed territories to find her, who'd saved her life and now offered her their loyalty. Through her new senses, she could feel their emotions. Devotion, awe, hope, and something like relief. They'd been searching for so long, and now their vigil was over. "What do we do now?" she asked her wolf. "Now," her wolf said with satisfaction, "we learn what we're capable of. And then we teach a certain alpha that rejection has consequences." The days that followed were a blur of discovery and transformation. Theron led them deeper into unclaimed wilderness, to a hidden compound that had been maintained by the Shadow Guard for generations. It was built into the side of a mountain, reinforced caves that had been expanded into comfortable living quarters with modern amenities. "This has always been meant for you," Theron explained as he showed her to her room. A spacious chamber with a bed covered in furs, a fireplace, and walls lined with ancient books. "We've been maintaining it, waiting." Ilara ran her fingers over the spines of the books, reading titles about werewolf history, ancient magic, the origin of the matriarchs. One caught her eye, The Binding Arts and Their Consequences. You'll want to read that one, Theron said, watching her. It explains what was done to you, and why it can never be done again. She pulled it from the shelf, flipping it open to a marked page. The text described a ritual that could suppress a wolf's emergence, used historically on criminals, or those deemed too dangerous to be allowed to shift. It required 3 elder wolves working in concert, and it left permanent scars on the subject's soul. "My parents did this to me," she whispered. "Along with the Pack's former healer and their head enforcer," Theron confirmed. "All 3 are still alive. All 3 carry the weight of what they did." Anger burned in her chest, hot and bright. But underneath it, something else stirred. Her wolf's voice, calm and measured. They were afraid. Misguided, but not evil. Remember that when the time comes for judgment. Over the following days, Ilara learned to shift at will. The first few times were awkward. Her wolf form so much larger than any normal werewolf that she knocked over furniture and misjudged doorways. But with practice came grace, and with grace came joy. She reveled in her senses, the way she could smell emotions in the air, taste the weather changing hours before it arrived, hear conversations from a mile away. Her wolf form was built for power and endurance rather than speed, but she could maintain a steady lope for hours without tiring. But it was her other abilities that truly amazed her. "Empathy is your foundation," Theron explained during a training session. They stood in a clearing surrounded by the Shadow Guard in human form. You can feel what others feel, even from a distance. It makes you an exceptional leader. But it can also be overwhelming. "I can already feel all of you," Ilara said, overwhelmed by the tide of emotions around her. "Your determination, Theron. Kira's impatience." She nodded to the amber-eyed woman. "Marcus's hunger. Did anyone feed him breakfast?" The guard in question, a broad-shouldered man with russet hair, laughed. "Skipped it to get here early. She's good." "Now, push your awareness outward," Theron instructed. "Not just emotions, commands, your alpha authority." Ilara focused, reaching out with that new sense. She found the thread connecting her to each guard member and gently pulled. "Kneel," she thought. As one, all 10 guards dropped to their knees. Not because they were forced, she realized, but because her request resonated with something deep in their wolf nature. They wanted to obey, felt honored to obey. She released them immediately. "That's terrifying." "That's power," Theron corrected, "and you'll learn to wield it justly. That's what makes a matriarch different from a tyrant." The healing came next. When Kira injured her hand during sparring practice, Ilara found herself drawn to the wound. She placed her hands over the cut and felt energy flow from her core, through her palms, into Kira's flesh. The wound knitted itself together in seconds, leaving only a faint pink line that would fade within hours. "I didn't know I could do that," Ilara breathed. "The matriarch is life," Theron said. "Where alpha dominance can destroy, your power creates and restores. It's why you're needed." Balance. She trained with each guard member, learning their names, their histories, their hopes. Kira had been born to the guard. Her mother and grandmother both serving before her. Marcus had been found as a rogue pup, lost and starving, and raised by Theron himself. Finn, the silver wolf who'd first comforted her, had joined after his entire pack was massacred by hunters. He'd been the only survivor, saved by his gift of foresight that showed him the attack hours before it happened. They became her family in ways her blood family never had. They laughed with her, trained with her, sat by the fire at night sharing stories and dreams. They challenged her when she doubted herself and supported her when the weight of her new identity felt crushing. "You're allowed to be both," Kira told her one evening as they watched the sunset from the mountain overlook. Both Ilara and the matriarch, both the girl who was hurt and the woman who will demand justice. You don't have to choose. It doesn't feel real sometimes, Ilara admitted. A month ago I was serving wine at pack ceremonies. Now She gestured helplessly at herself. Now you're exactly what you were always meant to be, Kira said firmly. The binding kept you small, Ilara. But you were never meant to be small. You were meant to be extraordinary. Days turned to weeks, and Ilara felt herself changing in ways that had nothing to do with her wolf. She stood straighter, spoke with confidence, met people's eyes instead of staring at the ground. The Omega who'd been taught to apologize for existing was becoming the matriarch who would demand the world acknowledge her. And through it all, one question burned in the back of her mind. What would she do when she faced Rowan again? The answer came sooner than expected. Finn burst into the compound one morning, his silver fur matted with sweat despite the winter cold. He shifted mid-run, stumbling to human form. "Scout," he gasped. "From Silvercrest. Found our trail." Theron's expression went hard. "How many?" "Just one, but he got away. He'll report back. They'll come in force." Ilara felt ice settle in her stomach. "They'll think I've joined rogues. Rowan will see it as a challenge to his authority." "Let him come," Kira said, her eyes flashing amber. "We'll show him what happens when an alpha rejects his true mate." But Ilara shook her head. "No. If we fight, people will die. And I'm not." She struggled for words. "I'm not ready to face him yet." "You don't have to be ready," Theron said quietly. "You just have to be willing. This confrontation has been coming since the moment he rejected you. Ilara, better to meet it on our terms than let him surprise us." She knew he was right. The thought of seeing Rowan again, of smelling his forest and embers scent, of feeling the ghost of their broken bond, it terrified her. But hiding would solve nothing. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Day, maybe 2, Finn estimated. Depends how fast the scout reaches Packlands and how quickly Rowan mobilizes. Then we prepare," Ilara decided. She was surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "We don't start the fight, but we'll finish it if we have to." The Shadow Guard spent the next day fortifying their position and drilling scenarios. Theron taught Ilara battle strategy, how to use her empathic sense to predict enemy movements, how to project authority even when surrounded by hostile wolves. "Your presence alone will unsettle them," he explained. "Most wolves have never seen a matriarch. They'll expect you to be weak, vulnerable. When they see what you really are, they'll be afraid," Ilara finished. "Yes, and fear makes wolves dangerous. So you must be unshakable. Show no hesitation, no doubt. You are their superior in every way that matters. Make them believe it." The war party arrived on the second day, just as the sun reached its zenith. Ilara felt them coming before she saw them, a wave of aggression and hostile intent that made her wolf bristle. She shifted to her massive white form and climbed to the overlook with the Shadow Guard flanking her. 23 wolves emerged from the tree line, all in wolf form, all radiating dominance and aggression. They were large, well-trained, battle-ready. The Silvercrest Pack's finest warriors, and at their head, larger than the rest, and practically vibrating with authority, was Rowan Kane. The sight of him sent a lance of pain through her chest. The mate bond might be broken, but the memory of it remained, a phantom ache that would probably never fully fade. His forest and embers scent reached her even from a distance, now tainted with ozone and steel and anger. Beside him prowled Seraphina in wolf form, her cinnamon and iron scent mixed with bloodlust and triumph. She thought this was a hunt, She thought Ilara would be easy prey. "Let me show her otherwise," Ilara's wolf growled. Rowan shifted to human form and took several steps forward, careful to remain within his pack's protective circle. When he spoke, his voice carried across the clearing with alpha command. "Ilara Moss, you were exiled from Silvercrest territory. You had no right to establish yourself in these lands, and you certainly had no right to align yourself with rogues." His eyes swept over the Shadow Guard with barely concealed disgust. "Surrender yourself now, and I'll make your execution quick. Resist and—" Ilara shifted to human form. The transformation silenced him mid-sentence. She stood on the overlook, wearing the simple leather clothing the guard had provided, her long hair loose and flowing, and she met Rowan's gaze without flinching. Through their broken bond, she felt his shock, his confusion, and underneath it all, a flicker of regret that he was trying desperately to suppress. "I am not Ilara Moss anymore," she said, and her voice resonated with power that made several of Rowan's wolves whine and lower their heads involuntarily. "That girl died when you rejected her, when you tore apart a sacred mate bond for political ambition, when you chose power over destiny. You're still an Omega," Rowan snarled, but she heard the uncertainty in his voice. "You're still—" "I was never an Omega," Ilara interrupted. "I am the matriarch, the first in 100 years. And you, Rowan Kane, made a mistake. You didn't just reject a mate bond. You rejected the will of the moon goddess herself." Seraphina shifted to human form, her beautiful face twisted with derision. "You expect us to believe that? You, the weakest wolf in—" "Enough!" Rowan snapped, but his eyes never left Ilara. "This is insanity. Matriarchs are legends, children's stories." "Then let me tell you a story," Ilara said. She descended from the overlook with fluid grace, the Shadow Guard moving with her like a well-trained unit. Once there was a girl whose power scared those who should have protected her. So they bound it, locked it away, made her weak and small and harmless. She grew up thinking she was nothing, less than nothing. And then one night, an arrogant alpha publicly rejected their mate bond, and the breaking of that bond shattered the chains that had held her. Would you like to know what happened next? She was closer now, close enough to see the fear beginning to creep into Rowan's expression, to smell the ozone intensifying as his wolf recognized the threat she posed. "Show us then," Seraphina taunted. "If you're so powerful, prove it. Or are you still just a weak little—" She never finished the sentence. Seraphina shifted mid-speech and launched herself at Ilara with a snarl. Claws extended, teeth bared. It was a move meant to kill, meant to rip out Ilara's throat before she could react. Ilara caught her mid-leap. One hand, that was all it took. She grabbed Seraphina by the scruff and held her suspended in the air as the female thrashed and snarled. Then, with barely any effort, Ilara slammed her into the ground, hard enough to crater the earth. Seraphina yelped and scrambled backward, limping, her wolf form suddenly seeming very small and fragile. "You wanted proof," Ilara said calmly. "There it is." The Shadow Guard shifted as one, and the sound of 10 massive wolves transforming in perfect synchronization was like thunder rolling across the mountains. When the transformation completed, they stood revealed in their true forms. They weren't normal wolves. They were dire wolves, creatures from legend that hadn't been seen in centuries. Each one stood twice the size of Rowan's largest warriors, with fur that seemed to absorb and reflect light in impossible ways. Their eyes glowed with ancient power, and when they growled, the sound vibrated in the chest like a second heartbeat. Rowan's war party panicked. Several wolves broke formation, backing away with tails tucked and ears flat. A few shifted to human form, as if removing themselves from wolf form would somehow protect them from what they faced. "These are the Shadow Guard," Alara announced, "bound by ancient oath to protect the matriarch. They are not rogues. They are not criminals. They are the oldest, most honored warriors in our world, and they have claimed me as their rightful leader." She shifted then, letting her own true form emerge. The massive white wolf, with silver threads and glowing eyes that stood even taller than the Shadow Guard. Power radiated from her like heat, and when she fixed her attention on Rowan's wolves, most of them dropped to their bellies involuntarily, unable to resist the weight of her presence. Rowan remained standing, though she could see the effort it cost him. His wolf fought against the instinct to submit, pride and fear warring in his eyes. "This is your last warning," Alara said, and her voice in this form was layered, echoing with the power of the moon itself. "Leave these lands. Return to your territory. Tell your pack that the matriarch has risen, and any who wish to challenge that will face the same judgment you now face." "You can't," Rowan started. "I can," Alara said, "and I will. You rejected me, cast me out to die, and in doing so, you freed me to become what I was always meant to be. So here I stand, Rowan Kane. Judge me again. Tell me I'm weak. Tell me I'm nothing." Silence, heavy and absolute. Then, slowly, Rowan shifted to human form and dropped to one knee. His head bowed, and when he spoke, his voice was hoarse with emotion. "Mercy," he said. "I was wrong. I was foolish and blind, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Around him, his wolves followed suit, shifting to human form and kneeling. Even Seraphina, nursing her injured leg, lowered her head in submission. Alara felt no triumph in their surrender, only a strange, hollow sensation where she'd expected vindication to be. "What do we do?" she asked her wolf. "We judge with wisdom, not vengeance. That's what separates us from tyrants." She shifted back to human form and approached Rowan. Up close, she could see tear tracks on his face, smell the regret and shame rolling off him in waves. The mate bond that should have connected them was gone, but she could still sense his emotions through her empathic gift. He was genuinely sorry, but sorry didn't undo the damage. "You cannot have my forgiveness," she said quietly. "Not today. Maybe not ever. What you did was unforgivable, and I will not absolve you of that guilt simply because you realize now what you threw away." Rowan flinched, as if she'd struck him. "But I will give you justice," Alara continued. "Stand up." He rose slowly, keeping his eyes on the ground. "From this day forward, I claim these lands, and all unclaimed territories, within a 50-mile radius. This is matriarch territory now, and any wolf is welcome here, regardless of pack, rank, or origin. The only law is this: harm none without cause, protect the vulnerable, and serve the greater good rather than personal ambition." She looked past Rowan to his assembled wolves. "Any of you who wish to leave your pack and join me, you may do so without fear of retribution. I will protect you." Several wolves exchanged glances, clearly tempted. "As for you, Rowan Kane," Alara said, turning her attention back to the alpha who'd rejected her, "you will return to your pack, and you will tell them what happened here. You will tell them that you encountered the matriarch, that you challenged her, and that you lost. You will also tell them this: when the matriarch calls for a council of all packs in this region, you will attend, or you will be declaring war on me and mine." "I'll attend," Rowan said immediately. "Anything. I'll do anything." "I don't want your servitude," Alara said, and there was a sharp edge to her voice. I want you to be a better Alpha, to rule with wisdom instead of pride, to remember that strength without compassion is tyranny. She turned to Seraphina, who still knelt on the ground, her leg healing slowly. And you sought to kill me, which is your right in a challenge. But you did so with cruelty and ambition, rather than honor. You are hereby stripped of your beta rank. You will serve as an Omega in Silvercrest for 1 full year, learning what it means to be powerless before you are allowed to hold power over others again. Seraphina's face went white. You can't. I can, Elara said flatly. I am the matriarch. I speak with the authority of the moon goddess herself. Challenge me on this, and I will do far worse. Seraphina bowed her head, defeated. Go, Elara commanded, her voice resonating with power. All of you, go, and don't return to these lands without permission. Rowan's pack fled, shifting to wolf form and disappearing into the trees at a dead run. Only Rowan himself remained for a moment longer, his eyes fixed on Elara with an expression of profound loss. I would have loved you, he said quietly. If I hadn't been such a fool, I would have loved you beyond reason. Yes, Elara agreed. You would have. But you chose differently. Now, you get to live with that choice. He nodded once and shifted, his massive dark wolf turning and loping after his pack. When they were gone, Elara's legs finally gave out. Theron caught her before she hit the ground, his aged oak and winter snow scent surrounding her with comfort. That was well done, he said softly. Truly. I don't feel good about it, Elara admitted. You're not supposed to, Kira said, approaching with the rest of the guard. Justice isn't about feeling good. It's about being fair, even when every instinct screams for revenge. He hurt you, Finn added, and you hurt him back by showing mercy. That's the cruelest punishment for an Alpha like him, knowing he destroyed something precious with his own hands and can never reclaim it. Elara let them help her back to the compound, her body exhausted from the physical and emotional toll of confrontation. But as they walked, she felt something shift inside her, a settling, like pieces finally clicking into place. She was the matriarch, not just in power, but in truth. She had faced her greatest fear and emerged victorious. She had chosen justice over vengeance, wisdom over rage, and for the first time since the rejection, she felt whole. 3 months later, Elara stood on a different overlook, watching the sun set over her territory. The compound had grown, with new buildings constructed to house the wolves who'd chosen to join her court. 17 had come from Silvercrest alone, drawn by the promise of a better way. Others had arrived from distant packs, rogues and exiles, and those simply seeking something more. She'd established her first laws, set up councils to handle disputes, and begun the delicate work of forging alliances with neighboring packs. Some Alphas welcomed the matriarch's return. Others saw it as a threat to their power. She'd deal with the threats as they arose. Deep thoughts? Theron asked, approaching from behind. He'd been training a group of young wolves in combat techniques and smelled of sweat and satisfaction. Just thinking about how much has changed, Elara said. 6 months ago I was serving wine and trying to be invisible. Now I'm changing the world, Theron finished. He moved to stand beside her, their shoulders almost touching. One decision at a time. They'd grown close over the months, she and Theron. Not as mates. The mate bond was a once-in-a-lifetime gift, and hers had been broken beyond repair. But as partners, chosen companions who'd found something deeper than destined connection. The blood moon rises next month, Theron said, his voice dropping to something more serious. The old texts say that's when the barriers between our world and the ancient realms grow thin. when things that have been sleeping might wake. Is that your way of telling me to expect new problems? Alara asked wryly. Just preparing you, he said. You've claimed your throne and established your authority, but there are older forces in this world than alpha politics. Some of them won't be pleased that a matriarch has risen again. Alara thought about the ancient prophecy, about the line that said she would come when darkness threatens the balance. She'd assumed it referred to pack corruption, to the petty tyrannies of wolves like Rowan, but maybe it meant something more. Whatever comes, she said firmly, we'll face it together. Together, Theron agreed, and she felt his hand brush against hers, a promise and a comfort. Behind them, the compound glowed with warm light and echoed with laughter. Her found family, her chosen court, her people. They'd built something worth protecting here, something worth fighting for. And if ancient evils wanted to challenge that, well, they'd learn what her old pack had already discovered. The matriarch had risen, and she was done being anyone's victim. And so Alara's journey from rejected Omega to powerful matriarch became legend, whispered in pack territories across the continent. The girl who was meant to be nothing became everything. The wolf who was bound became unbreakable. She learned that true strength isn't about dominance. It's about wisdom, compassion, and the courage to choose justice over vengeance. Her story teaches us that rejection can become transformation, that pain can forge purpose, and that sometimes being broken is the first step to becoming whole. What did you think of Alara's transformation? Have you ever faced rejection that ended up leading you to something better? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing how these stories resonate with you. If you enjoyed this tale of the matriarch's rise, please like this video, share it with fellow werewolf romance fans, and subscribe to our channel for more stories of fated mates, powerful transformations, and wolves who defy destiny. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss when we post the next chapter of Alara's saga. Because with the blood moon rising and ancient forces stirring, her greatest challenges are still to come. Thank you for listening to Alara's story. We'll see you in the next chapter, where the blood moon brings threats that even a matriarch might struggle to face. Until then, may your own wolves run free.